Saludos a toda la afición de LLO. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial en la tarde de hoy. Gente de Corea del Sur para el mundo, pero en directo desde Estados Unidos. Actor, productor, director, autor de libros y un fellow podcaster. Augustus Cho llega aquí a Lucha Libre Online. Mr. Cho, it is an honor for us to have you as our guest. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm fine. ¿Cómo estás?
Todo excelente. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I wanted to start this interview asking you, how did your passion for acting or for this filmography career started?
Well, you know, when I was young, it wasn't part of my life plan. Do you need to translate or should I?
I can translate at the end, sir. Okay. At the end of your statement. Thank you.
Sure. But it's one of those things where you kind of fall into it. And that's what happened.
I'll translate that. Augustus nos comenta que la actuación como tal no era parte de su plan. You moved from South Korea in 1968 to the United States. You live basically everywhere. You live in multiple states. But my question for you is, once you arrived to the United States of America, what barriers and obstacles you face as a Korean citizen at that point?
Well, you know, I was a child. I was 10 years old. So my experience and my observations are probably different than if I had come as an adult. I was not intimidating to American society as a child. So it made things easier, I believe. Society has changed a lot since then.
I'll translate that. Augusto llega a los 10 años a Estados Unidos, a los 10 años, y ahí cambia entonces la cosa porque no tenía esa mentalidad de que se sentía intimidado por la sociedad estadounidense porque era un niño. Entonces, no, como que no fue una de sus preocupaciones. Once in the United States, as you mentioned, this was never part of your plan, but once in the States, when that, when did you receive that call from the acting industry? Because so which actor or actress or movie or TV series like inspire you enough to do that big leap of faith and jump into this industry?
I think there is inherent power or influence in the media, including film. Who influenced me is less important than my interest in the profession, something that I did not plan on doing. But when I was in my 50, I think I was maybe in my late 40s, something triggered it and it happened.
I'll translate that. No fue, vamos a decirlo de esta manera, un actor o actriz en específico, fueron los medios y todo este esquema completo que tiene la industria de la actuación y de Hollywood que lo llevan entonces a tomar esta decisión una vez ya estaba en Estados Unidos. So that media and that whole situation with the Hollywood industry is so powerful that it is basically drowning all of the markets. So once you decided to do that, that jump into that industry, what was the first step? Like, because you study something completely different to what you are doing right now. Like you study, I believe, theology, but you also have a degree in economics. So that's completely different degrees to what you're doing today. So when was that moment that you decided, so I want to be part of the Hollywood industry and this will be my first step?
I see you have done your homework.
Thank you.
Life is interesting. Sometimes you can plan for it. Other times life happens to you. In my case, I noticed as I was taking my daughter to different type of auditions, and I've observed from the background certain amount of talents and needs that the field had. I felt that I could meet that need, and that's how it happened.
Pretty interesting. I'll translate that. Augustus tiene un grado en teología y un grado en economía completamente distinto al mundo de la actuación. ¿Cómo entonces Augustus llega o da el salto a esta industria tan intimidante y tan interesante. Él llevaba a su hija a diferentes rehearsals o a diferentes momentos para que ella pudiera, vamos a decirlo así, aspirar a este rol de actriz. Y estando ahí, viendo las necesidades que había, él dice, ok, esto es lo que hace falta. Y ahí es que decide entonces dar el salto. Every career has a humble beginning, and I'm pretty interested to know what's Augustus Cho first role or gig inside the acting industry, because usually it is a role as an extra, but people do like as much as possible with that role. So which movie or TV series or role commercial you had, and how did you maximize that opportunity?
Yes, I did not do many extras or in the background role. You probably know that Hollywood and film goes in cycles. So whatever the cultural need of that cycle is when you have to ride that wave. When I came in, there was a certain need, and Hollywood is very visual medium. So they either like your looks or they don't. And if they like your looks and there's a need, then you start. I did a lot of films and TVs, but not too much background work.
Perfect, I'll translate that. Augustus no tuvo ese background de extra, vamos a decirlo de esa manera. No tuvo mucho de eso, porque en aquel momento cuando él comienza, existe una necesidad de la industria de Hollywood, de una apariencia en específico, de un background cultural, y esto es lo que ocasiona que si a Hollywood le gusta como tú te ves, o le gusta o complementa lo que ellos necesitan, de esa manera ellos te contratan. Entonces Augustus no tuvo tanta experiencia como extra, sino que fue directamente a los roles grandes, porque eso era lo que exigía la industria en ese momento. And speaking of big roles, that's something really interesting, because you had a huge opportunity in your career as an actor. And I'm talking about obviously GI Joe Retaliation. How did that opportunity happen? How do you cast it for that? And how do you felt when they notify you, hey, Augustus, you're going to be the North Korean leader?
You know, I think sometimes it's just luck. What happened was I went to audition for something else on TV show. I think it was called either One Tree Hill or Eastbound and Down. And when I went to this large casting company, when I went down there, they asked me afterwards, can you do something, wait and audition for something else? And I had no idea what that something else was. You want to translate? Then I'll continue.
You can continue. I'll do it at the end.
Okay. And then when I came out auditioning for Eastbound and Down for that TV show, the one of the head person called me into his office and said, can you audition for this role? And he didn't have any sides or scripts, so he kind of created a scene from his memory. And that scene was in the opening of that GI Joe movie where Dwayne Johnson, Channing Tatum, the team goes into the North Korean prison and they try to break in. And there's a scene where the North Korean officer is holding a cup and drinking. And they shoot that cup out of his hand. That was the role that they had asked me to audition. And I did that. And I forgot. 3 months went by. They didn't tell me what I was auditioning for. Then 3 months later, on my birthday, August 10th, so many years ago, there was a phone message. And when I played it, it was my agent. And she was very excited, saying that, oh, you got this huge role in GI Joe, role of this North Korean, and so on. And they're going to fly you down to New Orleans and this and that, and put you up in a hotel, all these things. And I'm thinking, I have no idea what she's talking about. And she was asking on the phone in the message, when did you audition for this? And I scratched my head like, I have no idea of auditioning for this. And then I thought about it, and finally it occurred to me, well, I did audition for this one unnamed thing, but that was not the leader of North Korean leader. It was something else. I was confused. And finally, the day arrived, they send me tickets and all those. It takes a certain process. They custom fit you with a wardrobe and all those things. And I went down to Florida, to New Orleans to film it.
I'll translate that. Augustus Cho, lo primero que menciona es las cosas ocurren a veces por destino o por suerte. Augustus Cho es el actor que hace del North Korean leader en GI Joe Retaliation con actores como Channing Tatum, como Bruce Willis, como The Rock. Y entonces, ¿cómo ocurre esta oportunidad? Augustus Cho llega a hacer un casting para otra cosa completamente distinta. Y eso fue Eastbound and Down, la serie de Will Ferrell. Y entonces le dicen, oye, quédate, te puedes quedar para un rol adicional para hacer otro casting. Y él dice, sí, está bien. Y él hace un casting de algo normal. Fue exactamente la escena en donde cuando la película GI Joe, ellos van a la prisión en Corea del Norte y lanzan el disparo que le rompen la taza a aquel oficial que estaba allí sentado. Ese fue el rol que lo audicionó. Completamente distinto. Él dejó pasar por desapercibido ese. Pasaron 3 meses y el 10 de agosto, en la fecha de su cumpleaños, lo llama a su agente. Oye, Augustus, felicidades, eres parte del reparto de GI Joe 2 y GI Joe 2. ¿En qué momento? Y empieza a rascarse la cabeza. ¿En qué momento yo audicioné para esto? Honestamente, no recuerdo. Y, ok, sí, hice un casting para algo que no tenía nombre. Para un rol que no tenía nombre, pero era bien distinto. Y entonces, por esas casualidades de la vida, lo que mencioné anteriormente, la necesidad de la industria de Hollywood, los looks y la experiencia que él tenía fueron suficientes como para ganarle ese rol tan importante que fue el villano de villanos en GI Joe Retaliation. How was working with people like, Dwayne Johnson, Bruce Willis, Channing Tatum? Like, you had in this blockbuster, successful movie, the opportunity to work with 3 of the most coveted actors in the whole industry. So how was this opportunity for you?
Back in 1970s, when I was in college, Bruce Willis had a show called Moonlighting with Sybil Shepherd. And at that time, when I would watch it periodically, it never occurred to me that one day, 20 or 30 years later, that I would be actually in a movie with him. So life is interesting. So you don't know what to expect. So when this happened, it was a large exposure to a large set very quickly. I had done smaller ones, but when this thing happened, #1 movie in the world, large casting, it was quite impressive. But, being an actor is not a rocket science. It's not as hard as people think it is, but it's not as easy as people think it is. So you have to have a certain understanding of what acting is, and then it's okay. But there's a lot of fun being on set, especially the catering of food, excellent. And you make lots of friends and you keep in touch. But in the end, we're all human beings. And it's just our job to create a product. And that's all it is a product. It's nothing special, just a product that people buy to entertain. And so as long as we keep that perspective, I think we'll be okay as society. Films should not influence you. You should just enjoy it for what it is.
Excellent mentality. I'll translate that. Le pregunto, él trabajó en esta película de GI Joe Retaliation con Bruce Willis, Channing Tatum, Dwayne Johnson, entre muchísimas otras personas. La película número 1 en el año que salió. ¿Cómo fue esa experiencia? Y él dice, mira, en los 70 yo crecí viendo las películas de Bruce Willis. Él creció viendo esas películas. ¿Y qué se iba a imaginar él que tantos años después él iba a estar trabajando con Bruce Willis en el mismo set, en la misma película, en un rol donde estaban juntos uno al lado del otro? Y menciona algo bien interesante. La comida es buena, el catering, toda la cosa, y te haces amigos, mantienes contacto con ellos, pero son humanos al final del día. No puedes permitir que las películas o estos roles grandes influencien la manera en que tú eres como ser humano. Y una vez la sociedad en general entienda el punto de que, ok, la película es una película, no es la vida en general, y no permitas que te influencie lo suficiente como para cambiar tu ritmo y tu estilo, es lo suficientemente bueno como para decir, ok, como sociedad hemos progresado de esa manera. You mentioned Eastbound and Down, and you had a pretty interesting role over there with Will Ferrell. So how did that opportunity happen, and how instrumental was this gig in your career?
I guess it's all part of the casting process. One thing builds on the other. We filmed that at 6 p.m., starting at 6 p.m. in Wilmington, North Carolina, when there were a lot of filming and TVs done in North Carolina. And then we filmed it all night long until 6 a.m. in the morning. The first part, the dinner part, was filmed in Wilmington, but the cannon shot, we had to drive an hour down, a place called Charlotte, another place where they shoot the cannon because of city ordinance. But it was very interesting. The characters, they were obviously exceptionally funny, and their characters were fully developed for laughter. And everybody's very professional. And so it was a lot of fun. Will Ferrell did his part, and we did our part, and we just put it all together. Making film is really a teamwork. So from the driver who picks you up at the airport, to the cameraman, to the lighting, to the actor, it's just one big product. The credits at the end of the movie, you see hundreds of names, sometimes hundreds of names. That's what it takes to make one movie. But lots of people only recognize the faces, but it's really ultimately a teamwork. And without them, nothing is possible. But for me, it was a lot of fun because being in front of the camera is easier than being behind the camera, because there's lots of preparation behind the camera for that 1 minute scene, 5 minute scene. So being an actor is a lot easier on set than it is behind the camera.
I'll translate that. Él tuvo la oportunidad también, como dijo ahorita, de estar en Eastbound and Down con muchas figuras, entre ellos Will Ferrell. Y menciona algo bien interesante. Él empieza a grabarse todo a las 6 de la tarde y comienza a hablar de todo este proceso complicado que ocurre detrás de la cámara. Entonces, para una escena de 1 minuto, un libreto, tú necesitas, como él dice, ves cientos de nombres al final de la película o de la serie, de personas en los créditos, y nunca te das cuenta de la cantidad de trabajo que requiere eso. Como actor es divertido, claro, la pasas bien, el personaje, como él dice, estaba creado para hacer reír a todo el mundo, al igual que los personajes anteriores, pero llega el momento en donde, ok, frente a la cámara todo es divertido, todo es bonito, pero cuando estás detrás de la cámara, ahí se complica la cosa y enfrenta retos. Entonces hay que, vamos a decirlo de esta manera, agradecer al público, discúlpame, al personal que está detrás de la cámara trabajando, a los productores, a los directores, a los escritores, a todo el mundo que son parte de este gran éxito. I also want to say something else in Spanish. Augustus Cho tiene su podcast disponible, se llama Fried Up, pero es parte del Nene Music Network. The Nene Music Network lo pueden conseguir a través de Anchor Podcast, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, está disponible en iHeartRadio y en Spotify. The Nene Music Network, y lo pueden buscar como Fried Up. Augustus, as a fellow podcaster, how did this, opportunity for you occur? Like, how did it happen, and what motivated you to sit down? Because you have, for example, you can talk with people from Red Theory. You can talk a variety of topics over here. So how did this concept occur?
I have a friend named Mitch, and he's working with a friend of his, Ruben Martinez. And so Mitch suggested that I might try podcasting with Ruben Martinez, and it's been a very good experience. I find both of them exceptionally fine people. They're very humble and really solid human beings, which I really appreciate, because often people that I deal with or have worked with are very superficial, as you can imagine. So we tried it, and it seems to work. And so we invite interesting people. Hopefully by listening and talking to these podcast guests, the end result is somehow bettering the human existence. So we try to improve the quality of human life by having them share what works for them, what doesn't work for them. Because in the end, it's a long journey that we all take. And if we can help each other, then that makes the journey that much better.
I'll translate that interesting point of view. Augustus Cho tiene su programa, como mencionamos, se llama Fried Up, está dentro de parte del Nene Music Network. Y ahí, ¿cómo ocurre esta idea? Su amigo Mitch le dice, oye, deberías hacer algo con otro amigo que tengo también. Y, ok, pues vamos a intentarlo. ¿Cuál es la visión o por qué ocurre este podcast? La visión de Augustus es bien interesante. Él no es un podcast para sentarse a hablar una entrevista, cualquier cosa, no. La intención es mejorar la vida humana al final de su trabajo. ok, las personas que escuchen el podcast puedan adaptarse o a entender ciertas cosas que tal vez necesiten mejorar en su vida para ser un mejor ser humano y a su vez ser mejor sociedad. Y es un punto de vista bastante interesante porque lo que busca Augustus con esto es eso mismo, ser mejor como raza humana unos a los otros, y es una intención excelente. Before we go, I want to thank you so much, sir, for your time. More than honored to have you here as our guest. Last but not least, what message can you send to the audience out there in Latin America and basically in every country to do exactly what you said, like to be a better human being, to be a better society, and to improve as not as a country but as a planet?
Everybody has value individually, and if we are to change society and nations and thus the world, it must begin with one person, and that one person has to be you. And if you can change yourself for the better, then next person can change themselves for the better. The big accomplishments start out small at an individual level. So if we cooperate as human race to work for bettering of the world, then I think we can succeed. There's no reason why we cannot, other than our desire. So I hope to encourage all human beings, North America, Central America, South America, to be your best. Then the world will be our best. I thank you for this time, and I appreciate the opportunity to share.
I thank you as well for your time. Before we go, I want to translate that to Spanish. ¿Cómo podemos ser una mejor sociedad? ¿Cómo podemos ser mejores personas? El cambio empieza por uno, empieza por nosotros. Si nosotros intentamos cambiar y ser lo mejor que podamos ser como seres humanos, el mundo es un lugar mejor porque cada uno está intentando dar su máximo, cada uno está intentando ser mejor persona, ser mejor sociedad, y con ese cambio individual, con ese cambio que se comienza, ahí tú puedes entonces impactar otras vidas. Sir, I thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom with us, and always wishing you success in your career and in your personal life.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Este fueron Augustus Cho y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online.